from about the first time we hit the escalator in the main building on the saltwater side, Davy's eyes lit up, and it did something to me in that moment. Just being able to see that and experience it. I love to come here and watch his wonder just turn on. It brings out a side of him in his creativity. I see a joyful nature to him. I truly believe this is his favorite place on the planet.
Hey there, Podcast Aquanauts. It's your host, Casey here. Have you ever visited a zoo or an aquarium? If you're listening to this podcast, I assume the answer is either yes or not yet, but I want to. Take a second and consider this, though. What if you wanted to visit one of those places, but you couldn't? Maybe you're a person who uses a wheelchair, but the buildings weren't designed to accommodate your mobility needs. Maybe you're a person who is blind or who has low vision, but the exhibits lack multisensory elements to make the experience resonate for you. Maybe you're a member of the deaf community, but closed captioning isn't available for the IMAX film you want to see. Or maybe it's an element of the experience that those of us who lack a sensory challenge wouldn't even consider, such as overwhelming noise, a strong odor, or excessive light in a particular gallery. And if that person were you, if your needs weren't being met, how would it make you feel? Left out? Ignored? Invisible? The mission at the Tennessee Aquarium is to connect people with nature and empower them to make informed decisions about water and wildlife. People, not some people, all people. In this episode, we'll talk about the fundamental empathy that guides how the aquarium operates and the steps we've taken to ensure that we're helping as broad an audience as possible to feel meaningfully connected with the natural world. We'll hear from the aquarium's Director of Inclusion, Equity, and Diversity and the Executive Director of a nonprofit helping institutions like ours to become more accessible. But I'm probably most excited for you to hear from the father of a young boy living with autism for whom weekly trips to the aquarium has become a bonding experience and a destination filled with joy and a feeling of being seen and heard. Who wouldn't want to feel that way? Anyway, that's more than enough for me. Let's get to it, shall we? On with the podcast. Hello, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Podcast Aquatic, the official podcast of the Tennessee Aquarium. Today, I want to talk about an aspect of the aquarium that is something that's extremely important, both to me personally and to us as an institution, but which I don't think is all that visible necessarily to people who it doesn't directly impact, and that is accessibility. And we're going to get into covering what exactly accessibility is, but first, let me introduce the guest for today's show. We're going to begin with Marilyn Payne. You are our Director of Inclusion, Equity, and Diversity. Have I got that title right?
That's correct. There's a lot of words, but yes, that's correct.
All right. And next to you is Uma, and we already talked about this. I'm not going to try and pronounce your last name, but Uma, what is your last name, and who do you represent? What's your title there?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Uma Shrivastava, and I am the proud Executive Director of KultureCity, a wonderful nonprofit that you'll get to learn more about later. Absolutely. And then next to you is Ben Sheffield. Ben, you are joining us, and we'll get into your story later, but you're coming to us from where? And
Sure. Benjamin Sheffield. Ben Sheffield. I live in the Atlanta area. I am on the Atlanta Executive Leadership Council for Autism Speaks. I am the chair of the council. And by day trade, I'm a recruiter. So this is a passion, a sidebar passion of mine that I very much love pouring into.
Awesome. And a fan of the aquarium from our past discussions. I am very excited to talk that through. But before we get too into this, now that we've introduced everybody, first of all, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us. What is accessibility? That's a big question, a big thing to start off with. But for a lot of people, if you may not know what that is. So whoever wants to take a stab at it.
Well, I'll start. For me and for the aquarium, we consider accessibility also belonging. Accessibility means and ensures that everyone can experience the aquarium in whatever capacity they visit us, whether they have physical challenges, whether they have limited financial means, whatever those challenges are, we want to make sure everyone has equitable and equal access to the aquarium, whether that could also be sensory processing challenges. We just want to make sure that the aquarium is everyone. It's a welcoming place for everyone, so accessibility means that you belong. Everyone belongs here.
All right.
Awesome. Let me expand on that a little and share some numbers with you. So 1 in 4 of us has a sensory need. So at this table, there's 4 of us here. 1 of us has a sensory need. It could be a firm diagnosis, or it could just be one of us getting overwhelmed from time to time, whether it's crowds, light, sounds, other stimuli in our environment. You could be born with a said condition, or again, acquire it through a life event like an accident, a veteran coming back from serving our country. And that 1 in 4 of us oftentimes gets left behind. I want everybody to go back 5 years and think about COVID, when we all sat in our apartments, our houses, we were on Zoom, we were on Teams. I got married on Zoom, we mourned on Zoom, and we all craved that belonging, that interpersonal communication connection. And we didn't have that. Individuals and families with sensory needs face that day in and day out. And Ben, I'm sure you can nod your head and agree on that. And what we do is really break that norm and say everybody can come in. Taking that 1 in 4, only 16% have an visible disability. So that's wheelchairs, that's walking devices, disabilities that you can see. The other 84% are invisible. So they look just like myself, they look like Marilyn, but when you get to learn their story, you identify they have ADHD, they have anxiety, they have PTSD, or another condition. And our goal, again, is to work with partners around the nation and the world to ensure these individuals can come in regardless of their sensory sensitivity.
And why is that so important? I mean, KultureCity you're based out of Birmingham. Your entire focus is on ensuring that places like us are accessible to as broad of an audience as possible. You are expanding on the philosophy that Marilyn mentioned earlier, but applying it to everywhere. Why is that important?
Absolutely. So I'm going to take my personal example, or give you my personal example here. I'm here with my husband and my daughter. Let's say, my daughter has a sensory need, and Tennessee Aquarium only did sensory hours on Mondays from 10 to 12. Well, we're here on a Thursday at noon. That means there's not modifications in place to account for my daughter's sensory needs. And even if she came in and the aquarium turned down the music, well, if her sensory sensitivity has nothing to do with sound, those modifications were not practical for her. And now other individuals are missing out on that entire experience. So for us, we really shift that narrative from sensory friendly and say, let's make venues sensory accessible. So you can wake up and come to the aquarium every day at 10 a.m. if you want, every Sunday when it's busy and jam-packed, and know that there's tools in place, which I'm sure we'll cover later in the conversation.
Let's bring you into this, Ben. So can you give us a little bit of background on your personal story as far as your son and why you're involved in today's conversation?
Sure. So before I do that, I'll kind of back what both these ladies had said a moment ago about accessibility. From my standpoint, the story is that my son is autistic. We had him diagnosed just prior to his 4th birthday. For much of the first probably year and a half, 2 years, there weren't a lot of places we could take him to where we felt safe, and he felt that he would appreciate the moment, feel joy in those moments in that setting and whatnot. And that's actually one thing that I came to love about your facility here. I'm going to go with what Marilyn said a moment ago. It's creating a space of belonging. I'll be very transparent with you. Prior to my little boy, accessibility was not top of my mind. I didn't really focus on those topics until it became real and personal to me. And that's ultimately what led me on the journey that I'm on now with Autism Speaks and in the work that I do in the autism community, both in Atlanta and beyond. But I loved your answer, and I loved your answer as well.
I would like to just add that when we talk about accessibility, it doesn't necessarily mean that we talk about it as something separate. When we design and when we program and we build for accessibility, that is for everyone. Mm-hmm. Everyone uses accessible sidewalks. Sure. Everyone uses the elevator. Everyone uses closed captioning. Those types of things that were designed for accessibility are something that everyone can benefit from. So we try not to look at it as something that is separate. We do want to make sure that we're intentional about it, but when we design for accessibility and when we program and when we engage with guests with accessibility in mind, that is for everyone.
So it's integrated.
It exactly
you stole
integrated.
My example. I was going to say it's the curb effect.
It is.
Sidewalks and ramps were initially made for wheelchairs to pass through, and now I use it all the time because I have a stroller I'm pushing. And so
That's
it
right.
benefits everybody.
Yeah, even the motion censored doors, we all go through those doors. We can't always go through the revolving doors. We may have things in our hands, but those motion censored doors that are designed for people with strollers or wheelchair users, we all use those. So accessibility is for everyone.
Okay. So, Uma, how does it make you feel to hear that it's something that it's integrated into all aspects of an institution? Does that, as someone who strives to get more places like us to be certified, do you feel like it's an important thing that it become integrated into the thought process on all aspects of an institution?
Oh, absolutely. It's about being a part of the DNA. It's never about the afterthought. So when we look at new ballparks, stadiums that are being built, I'm going to pick on the Buffalo Bills, for example. They're opening a new stadium next year. We've been in conversation with their architectural team for 4 years now and are building 7 sensory rooms at their new stadium, which is amazing. It's on every level. It's something they thought about from the beginning. It wasn't oh shoot, we're opening the stadium in 2 months. We need a sensory room to check the box. So we're really seeing this shift in culture from I need to do it because my boss told me to I need to do it because it's the right thing to do, because it does serve everybody and it's a sense of belonging.
So is that something that you see as a reflection of the work that you're doing, or is it just more of a cultural shift of awareness?
It's us, of course, but it's also families, it's advocates, it's individuals, allies who are saying we need to make this place, when I say this place, I mean the world.
Sure.
We need to make it a better place for everybody. So I don't feel like one person or one group can say, hey, we're the reason for this. It really takes a whole team.
So we've talked a little bit about accessibility as a philosophy, a design philosophy, just a way of thinking. But I think what's going to maybe make it a little bit more relatable to people is to find out about how it impacts somebody in a very real sense. And that's why I wanted to have someone come on who experiences the aquarium and benefits or has had a positive experience here directly because of the kinds of things that we're going to be talking about. So, Ben, can you talk about your introduction to the aquarium and what that first experience was like?
So yeah, I'll tell the story just briefly here. So we almost found this place by accident. I'll say that. I knew the aquarium existed. We had gone to Gatlinburg for a weekend, and we're on our way back to Atlanta. And I said, "Hey, Chattanooga's got an aquarium. It's halfway between. Let's stop and see what it's about." And I am not joking. From about the first time we hit the escalator in the main building on the saltwater side, Davy's eyes lit up. Little man's eyes lit up on his end, and it did something to me in that moment. Just being able to see that and experience it. That was the first of what has become, I believe, a long-term relationship at this point. I'm here every Saturday. It went from being my wife and him and I to just being the two of us. It's kind of our Saturday getaway. I love to come here and watch his wonder just turn on. It brings out a side of him in his creativity. I see a joyful nature to him. I truly believe this is his favorite place on the planet. And I'll say that up front. Atlanta's got a nice aquarium. It's unfortunately it's in a very busy part of town. I'm sure we'll talk about some of his sensory needs a little bit later on. But stimuli, a lot of things going on around him can really throw him off. You guys have a great facility here that kind of accommodates for less noise, visual and auditory and otherwise. And I think that's one thing that just that keeps us coming back.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what is it about our facility in particular that makes it such a good fit for him?
It's a little bit of everything that I'll speak to 3 in particular. For one, I love the flow of your facilities. One path through, I mean, you can backtrack on the path, obviously, and so on and so forth, but you don't have people coming in from corridors from everywhere. It's a natural process through where you can stop at exhibits and, take in what's there and then go on to the next, so to speak. There's not a lot of moving parts around him. I love the low lighting that you have here in both of your buildings. I think it's good for him. Davey, my little man does have a pretty massive sensitivity to light at times. If it's too bright in a setting and things of that nature, and darker settings tend to calm him a little bit more. And then also, there's not a lot of loud noise and things of that nature coming through. It's a more natural setting, I think, in that regard. When we go into environments where there is a lot of noise, a lot of music, just a lot of auditory sound, it can throw him off as well. So those three factors, I think, are three big ones for him.
Okay. And then you mentioned that you went to the saltwater side, to the Ocean Journey building. That's a really bright building compared to to River Journey, at least to begin with. So when you said that you immediately saw him sort of light up, can you kind of, what was it about his posture, what he was saying, how he was acting that made you think, okay, this is a good sign, this is a positive experience?
I'll just say it like this: when little man gets excited, you can tell. He's very expressive. So I mean, I can't quite recall all the mannerisms that day, but I mean, he was very, very excited. Arms were pointing at all the fish paintings going up the escalators. Once we got to the penguins, he was in the spot, and he went running. I can still remember this clear as day. He always, and if you happen to hear this on a podcast and you happen to be a visitor on a Saturday morning, I apologize in advance for this. My little boy runs headlong into everything, and sometimes everything means everybody. Just as an FYI. So far, we've not injured anyone or little men, so thankful for that. But he always runs headlong to the penguin pit, and then from there, it's just joy after every exhibit. He loves to 2 fingers on the jellyfish, and so on and so forth, and working your way down. Everything about him exudes joy when he's here.
Marilyn, I want you to react to this, and then I also want you, Uma, to react to what you're hearing about Ben's. And should I call him Davy, or is it okay to call him Davy?
We can call him Davy. It's okay. I usually call him Little Man on my public feeds, but for the purposes of this, I'm okay to give him his name.
Okay. Marilyn, I want you to react to what Ben was saying about his experience here and Davy's experience here. How does that make you feel as someone who is so focused on making us, like you said, a more accessible place?
I think it's amazing. It's absolutely heartwarming to hear it, but it's inspiring to hear it. And not just because it's, where I work and where I've spent over half my adult working life. I've been here a long time. But it's because not only is it because it's a heartwarming experience, but it makes us better. It makes us keep trying to strive to make sure that we're getting it right. We need that type of feedback from guests. We need all feedback from guests, but we really like to hear that feedback because it makes our exhibits better. It makes our programming better. We try to listen to our guests and the guest experience all the time. We try to implement any accommodations that we could possibly make. But hearing that the exhibits work, the pathway works, the design of the buildings, all of those things are beneficial to little man and to, thousands of children that visit and adults who visit every single year. That's a really inspiring story. We love hearing stories like that.
It's interesting that you mentioned the flow and the layout because, the layout of the buildings, the River Journey building was opened 33 years ago, back in 1992. So I don't know that, and Uma, you might have to correct me on this, whether people were thinking about things like this so many years ago. But the flow of the building is something we hear from a lot of people, maybe people who have sensory challenges and maybe just people who don't. They, as you mentioned, we all benefit from having a flow. People say that they like that it's a curated experience. They can't get lost. They don't ever have to wonder, where do I go next? Because there's only one way to go. So it is a good example, I think, of what you were talking about earlier about the things that we do that ultimately benefit and broaden our appeal to as wide an audience as possible, benefit the people who might not even have thought about that being something that they needed. Uma, I'd love to get your thoughts, though, as from KultureCity's perspective. How does it make you feel to know that a partnering organization, we've got the KultureCity certification here, we've had it now for, I think, 7 years. How does it make you feel to hear that somebody with whom you partnered for so long is having that kind of an impact on Davy and on
Absolutely. Ben? This is the fuel to our fire. This is the why behind it. We oftentimes get emails. I got one this morning about, hey, I had a negative interaction. I spent all this time, effort getting somewhere. And that's disheartening. But when we hear stories like these where it becomes a Saturday routine, maybe Ben and little man come and they bring more family. They bring grandparents. They bring aunts and uncles. It really becomes this experience that's there. And they get to talk about it and explore it. And it goes back to that original point of social isolation. They're not stuck at home. They're not seeing pictures on social media going, God, I wish we had done this. I wish we had the opportunity. So it's becoming like a typical family, right? You get an outing just like a typical family would. And that's what it's about.
I think if I can come in on the back end of that, I think that that's something that's very much understated in our community. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate you saying that. Yeah. it can be very isolating as a not just for that individual that's on the spectrum that's growing up and seeing the world kind of, unfortunately at times seeing the world kind of pass them by, right? It can also become isolating for families because at the end of the day, we're responsible for, as any parent should be, for the upbringing of our child. And it's hard at times when you feel like there's places you cannot go and things that you cannot do. I told you earlier, I'm a big baseball fan. I'm staring at the Chattanooga Lookouts Stadium right now. I used to go to 20 Braves games a year. I worked for the Braves in the summers. I grew up on baseball. My son's never been to a Braves game. And, things of that nature. And Atlanta Braves fans out there, I love the organization still. But, those are things that I have to think about sometimes. And I guess if you ask me why I keep coming back, it is the sense of belonging and safety and creativity and all the things that I can see in this place that inspires him in ways that.
And what's great is if, little man has a rough day for some reason, we know that there's staff trained here that can support him,
things.
that
Absolutely.
aren't just going to stare at him and say, what is that kid doing? What is that teenager doing? God, control him, right? You're not going to get those looks and comments because you're in a safe space.
So speak
Those
on that as
special
well.
connections are just really important because the more we hear about those special connections, the more we want to make more of those connections happen.
The Tennessee Aquarium's podcast Aquatic is made possible by support from the Tennessee Conservationist, the official magazine of Tennessee state parks. Each issue is filled with fascinating stories about Tennessee's native species, rich history, and unique culture. It's also your guide to exploring state parks and planning your next outdoor adventure. Subscribe today at tnconservationist.org.
I want to say this out loud on the podcast. It's not just the staff that are in the buildings. Your divers will swim up to the glass and hug Davy through the glass. And I've got numerous pictures, which I've sent you all, of that. And that happens every time. I almost think they know Davy at this point. So
Maybe do.
they may do that. But yeah, it's things like that just touch my heart.
I passed on your email about that to our dive safety officer, who's been on the show before, talking about diving at the aquarium, and he was appreciative of hearing that, because it is something that is interacting with guests for the divers is a very intentional part of their training before they ever get in the water and are around when guests are in the building, is that they do have those interactions. So I will echo what Marilyn said earlier, that it touches the heartstrings, it plucks the heartstrings to hear things like that, because most of the people who work here are in it because we believe very strongly in the mission. And I mean, a core component of that really is to make sure that we're empowering everyone to make those good decisions about water and about wildlife. And that doesn't end with people who don't have sensory challenges. It is literally everybody, which is why a role like yours, Marilyn, is so important.
And when we talk about staff, I think that's one of the questions you asked about, how do we hope to bridge the gaps, or how do we hope to bridge something that we're missing? When we're talking about staff, we also look for those types of experiences among staff. So when we are recruiting, when we're hiring staff, if we have staff that has that extra experience that can help engage with our guests better, then we look for that. We also support staff through training. All of our staff and volunteers are required to take the KultureCity training, the sensory processing training. We do that every year as part of our accreditation. And so we see that training and the results of that training in action when we have guests like Lil Man and families from all around.
And having been through, those seminars that we do with KultureCity, having gone through that training, it's very interesting it changes how you look at things. So you mentioned that, none of us would look at a situation that might happen with someone who had a sensory challenge and think, what's wrong with them, or control your kid. That's never how we would think about it. If you've gone through that training, you understand there's a very different way, more empathetic way to approach that situation, and to try to be helpful in a way that works for that family.
Absolutely.
It's all very individualized.
Absolutely. And one of the scenarios for this year's training is a 30-year-old man walking on the stadium concourse who's wobbly. Your first gut instinct is, ooh, he's inebriated, he's drunk, that's why he's wobbling. But when you get to know that person, he might have a vestibular sensitivity, which means his balance is off sense, and that's why he's wobbling. So it's never just assume at first glance that an adult is drunk or a child is throwing a temper tantrum. There might be something else at play, like a sensory sensitivity. So never judge a book by its cover, and that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, we try to reinforce engaging with respect and empathy, no matter who that is. So.
Empathy first and foremost.
Exactly.
I think it's very important to think empathetically. Uma, I would like to, I think I've done a disservice in not backing up and having you explain what exactly is involved in getting KultureCity certification.
Right.
So what does that mean in terms of what we're doing as an institution, and also what impact that has on the public?
Absolutely. So before I start talking about the certification, I do want to say that Tennessee Aquarium was one of the first venues to adopt this. And so 7-8 years ago, when they found out about this through the Birmingham Zoo, they said, we want to do this. Now, we have folks reaching out to us every day. So big shout out to Tennessee Aquarium and the team for saying guest first, no matter what. But for us, the certification is standardized. So whether you are a coffee shop, you're a restaurant, you are State Farm Arena, you're Tennessee Aquarium, the process remains the same. And those pillars, first off, are staff training. We want to train staff, whether they're full-time, part-time, volunteer, seasonal. And that ensures that as a guest, as you're walking through the exhibits, maybe you're purchasing tickets, you're at the concession line, you're in the bathroom, you're interacting with staff that are trained. So if a sensory overload moment takes place at any point in the footprint, you've got staff who are understanding, who are empathetic. This training is updated every year. It's built by medical professionals and those who are neurodivergent. So really bringing in those lived experiences. We never want to assume or pretend what somebody is feeling or going through. The second are sensory bags. How many times do you guys show up somewhere, sensory need or not, and you forget to pack something, whether it's a phone battery pack, whether it's sunglasses, a bottle of water? 9 times out of 10, you forget one of your sensory headphones, you forget your fidgets. And so our venues provide these at no cost to our families to check out during their visit. These can be wiped down with an antibacterial or Lysol wipe, so we're preventing germs. The third component of that is a social story, which is a visual guide. So you download our app, it's free, and we work with our venues and organizations to build out a visual guide. So if it's my first time here, which it is today, I can view this ahead of time and have a good understanding of what to expect, where the low light and the bright light areas are. I relate this to myself whenever I go out to eat. I need to see photos on Yelp. Before I order anything, even if it's a Chick-fil-A sandwich that I've ate 1,000,000 times, I need to see a picture. So this is kind of that version of it, but for venues. And then that fourth component is going to be a sensory room. Some places like Tennessee Aquarium are strapped for space. Maybe one day if we renovate and move things around, we'll have space for a sensory room, but providing those quiet spots really for folks to step away, decompress, hit that reset button, and go back out.
So in cases like ours where you don't have a dedicated space, then how do you determine what a quiet spot is?
Absolutely. So we've worked with the team over the past several years now and have identified areas where you'll see signage that says quiet area. Of course, quiet, loud, everything is very subjective, but these areas might be a little quieter, away from the main flow of traffic, not as much moving lights, etc., to allow folks to just sit, step away, decompress. It won't have any of your sensory elements like tactile, auditory, visual, but still a great spot for you to just say, hey, here's a bench, here's a quiet area, let's sit down, maybe take a sip of water, regather, and then continue on.
And those are identified by placards. So as you're walking through the building, you'll see a sign that I think it's a heart with...
It's a heart with like headphones on it.
That's right, yeah.
Yep. And so, and then as you walk into the IMAX is pretty loud. So you'll see signage that says headphone zone. And that lets you know, hey, you're walking into space. You might want to put on your headphones if you're sensitive to sound.
And then, Marilyn, I'd love to know a little bit about, Uma mentioned that we were one of the first zoological institutions to get this certification. Can you walk us through the story of how the aquarium became aware of KultureCity and why we pursued the certification?
Yeah, I think we were the first in Tennessee, if I'm not mistaken, so I say that all the time. But it was interesting. I read a story about KultureCity And the Cleveland Cavaliers, it was a very inspiring story. I was impressed by the work that they had put in, the Cavaliers had put in. I've never gone to a Cavs game. I don't know where the stadium is. I've never visited the stadium. But they were doing some really impressive work. They made a commitment to making sure that their stadium was accessible and friendly and inviting to all of their fans, yes, exactly. And so I reached out to Culture City, and someone from staff came up. They did a tour of our facility. We went through all of the training. We invited the Creative Discovery Museum, the Children's Museums, half a block away. And since then, we went through all of the training, and we became certified, and it's been a long-term partnership ever since. But yeah, it was just a really impressive story. And since then, Culture City is in stadiums all across the country and the world, I would say. So a lot of different venues. And so it's just been a really beneficial relationship and partnership.
Awesome. So Ben, when you're going out, and you mentioned that there can be a tendency for some people in that community, in the autism community, to feel like the world is maybe passing them by,
Sure.
Places you can't go. When you're thinking about going somewhere for the first time, how do you evaluate whether or not it's a place that's going to be okay for Davy, it's welcoming for Davy? Do you use the Culture City app, or do you just go by yourself? Do you or your wife go first to kind of scout it out?
I usually do a lot of research on my end, on the front end. I honestly read reviews a lot of times to just get a feel for what people are saying about the venue, about the environment, etc. On that end, I have been known to travel to a location just to check it out with my own eyes and ears first. My little boy, honestly, I say this knowing what I've said already. He's generally okay going into most places. Unless it's something with extreme noise or a lot of stimuli around him, he's usually going to be fine. I look out for that on that side. Coming here, and I know Culture City does a lot here with the headphones and some of the other devices and things that they provide through the aquarium. She mentioned something a moment ago as far as packing. I want to kind of say this out loud too, just in response to that. We pack well for Davy, so I've always got a distraction there. I've always got a set of headphones if he needs it. He uses the fidgets. He's the rubber things. Yep. This back and forth a lot. He brings them into the building. Everyone's always smiling and waving when he does, but neither here nor there. But yeah, so going back to your question of a moment ago, I research, I evaluate, I may go and visit the site to see, and then go forward from there.
Okay. So have you ever made use of any of the sensory bags that we have here, or have you ever sat in a quiet space with Davy? Has he ever needed any of those things?
We've done the quiet space once, I believe. As far as the other materials, no, we pack well, so I'm always very mindful to have that stuff with me. Okay.
To go back to that initial experience that you had at the aquarium, how old was Davy at the time?
5. He was 5 years old at the time when our first visit. It was a couple of years ago. He's 7.5 now. You want to play by the kids math there, but yeah, it was 5 when he came the first time.
So at this point, how many times have you been? Because my introduction to you, just hearing about your experience, was that here's a dad who comes here every week. So have you been here 100 times at this point?
I do that 70-mile trip every Saturday morning without fail. And if I don't come on Saturday, I'll be here Sunday.
Wow.
I've even brought him up in the school year. He had a really good day this year, and it was like a Thursday, I think. I brought him up on a Thursday evening after school. So we're here at least once a week.
We've talked about the experience that Davy has here, and I feel like a lot of the experience, and this is totally me speaking from outside looking in, so I don't know, but it feels like from the interactions I've had from parents of other autistic children that it's a shared experience, right? It's not something that's just that only the child is going through. I mean, the whole family has to shift and accommodate things to make life better for the.
Sure.
So, how do you benefit from coming up here? Like, what does the visiting to here do for you as the dad?
I'm a proud father, and I love this. It benefits me, honestly, just to see him have joy. I know that's a cheesy answer, and I apologize for it.
I love it, actually.
I wish I could come and bring, well, thank you. I wish I could bring more insight than that, but that's really the driver for me. That's why we do the 70 miles up 75 to and from every week on this end, and I'll do it for a long time going forward. We'll put it that way. So, yeah, any setting that I can take him to that brings that out of him, it fulfills me.
So you mentioned the penguins as being one of his favorite here at the aquarium. Is there another high point for him, a highlight from?
Two fingers. I hear two fingers a lot as we're coming up the escalator. He's looking forward to the stingrays, and then when we get on the freshwater side, the sturgeon. Davey loves basically every animal in your building, including the divers, who I think joked with one of your directors here in the building earlier that his favorite animal here is the divers. so for what that's worth. But yeah, he comes for all of it.
So, Uma, you mentioned we talked earlier about the fact that the aquarium was one of the first institutions to seek certification. Have you seen a lot of other zoos and aquariums follow suit? Are we well represented in terms of the types of organizations that seek certification through KultureCity?
Absolutely. We now in the past 7 years have certified almost 200 zoos and aquariums in US, Canada, Australia, and the UK. That sounds like an amazing number. I see your eyes wide open. But for us, there's a lot of work left to be done. There's still several zoos, aquariums within the U.S. and around the world that we have not yet impacted. And so, like I always say, the work has just begun. These institutions right now are helping us set that foundation. And until we're in every facility, or at least every facility is implementing sensory accessibility to some extent, we're not going to stop.
Similar question then for you, Marilyn. I mean, is there such a thing as an end goal for us, or is accessibility a constant pursuit that has no endpoint?
Accessibility is constant. It's intentional. It's constant. There, like Uma just said, there's always so much more that we can do, even though that we have made strides with sensory accessibility. There's so many other areas of accessibility that we're still trying to make strides in. And accessibility just means access for everyone. So whether those are physical barriers or financial barriers, we want to make sure language barriers, things like that. One of the things that Uma mentioned before is we do have the quiet spaces and the escape routes, but I would love a sensory room. I would love a sensory room in each building, and so that's something that, hopefully we can strive for. Also, enhancing the experience for guests who have blindness and low vision. That's an area that is an objective of ours, to make sure that, their experience is just as wonderful and amazing without a break in the experience. It shouldn't be something that's separate. It should be integrated in what we do and what we offer. And so that is one of our objectives, those types of enhancements, and to improve the experience for everyone.
Well, and I guess that it kind of ties into the fact that the aquarium is not a static entity in itself. I mean, we are constantly changing the animals that we have. Our galleries are constantly changing. I don't know when this is going to go live, but if I'm able to talk about it, we have another gallery that's coming next year. And are you involved in those discussions with Jeff Worley, our manager of exhibit services, the guy who designs our exhibits?
Yep.
Are you involved in discussions with him, making sure that we're thinking about things like this, or have we done such a good job of communicating the needs of considering accessibility that you don't even have to have those conversations? Are they thinking about them without you having to?
Well, it is embedded in everything that we do, but I am a part of the discussions, which is really good, because you do need all the different perspectives that you can get. So whenever there's a renovation, accessibility is considered. Our restrooms are designed with accessibility. We now have the multi-level vanities, which are accommodating to people in wheelchair, people with, for children, people with, height challenges and things like that.
Full-size changing tables?
Full-size, yeah. The assisted use restroom has the adult-size changing tables. Mm-hmm. Those are all things that we added on over the years. We didn't open with that type of design. The exhibits as well, We have curved cutouts and places where people in wheelchairs can get up close to the animals and to the exhibits. We have interactive feature at different heights so that children can engage with the exhibits in a more engaging way. So all of those things are by design. They're intentional. Whenever we do a renovation, whenever we open a new gallery, the new gallery that we plan to open will have like a pop-up area.
I was hoping you're going to talk about this.
Yeah, so instead of a separate pop-up area, again, it's integrated. So it'll be a pop-up area where someone using a wheelchair can go right in.
Roll in, yeah.
It shouldn't be separate. It's all inclusive. And so that's what we look at. Anytime we have an opportunity, we look at those types of things.
I want to piggyback off what Marilyn said. True accessibility can never be achieved. We can get to 99.999999%, but none of us, whether it's Culture City, it's a venue, an organization, can claim that we're at 100% because there's always something we can do. There's always someone else we can serve better.
That is so
and that's
true.
the challenge to all of us.
Thinking about it in terms of like nutrition, it's kind of the difference between like a crash diet and just the lifestyle change that lets you keep the weight off forever. You just have to, you live it.
Yeah.
You don't do it, you live it.
Right.
Exactly.
I'll speak to something broadly, even in regard to that. Obviously, that will always be a focus. I think it also needs to be said that our understandings of autism in particular continue to evolve, right? Yeah. And so as we continue to go on that path, I mean, up until March, it was believed that 1 in 36 fell somewhere on the spectrum. CDC came out in March and said it's now 1 in 31 believed to be on the spectrum. And we're learning more and more and more about, folks that otherwise wouldn't recognize that anything of that trait. I hate to make that so singular because it is such a broad spectrum, but folks that would not realize, hey, I might be somewhere on the spectrum. We're learning more and more and more about those things as we go. I'll share this publicly and privately, I guess, in the room here. I actually think I may be on the spectrum. The things that I see that Davey is sensitive to are things that I'm noticing in myself. I would have never known that growing up. Would have never recognized it. Just thought it was me, and that sort of thing. So, and going back to accessibility, it'll always be evolving. I think that our understandings in a lot of ways, not just on autism, but probably in a lot of disabilities out there, are always going to be evolving as well. So
Uma, do you find that once an institution achieves certification through Culture City, do they tend to do the kinds of things that we're talking about, where it becomes something that they're constantly thinking about and integrating into their future plans?
Absolutely. We'll have venues reach out to us and say, what else can we do? Do you have ASL recommendations? Do you have closed captioning? Depending on their environment, we need adult changing stations. What else can we do? And that's why our training changes every year. It's not the same video because what Ben said, our worlds are changing, science is changing, what we know is changing. So we need to stay up to date on that and not just sit on the language and the content we used 5 years ago or 10 years ago. Because Casey, before we started recording, you said, I might not be confident in some of the terminology, and some of that's changed throughout the years.
Yeah, that remains true. I'm still not confident.
You're doing great.
Thank you. I think it's, and I think probably part of my concern about that stems directly from that initial training with Culture City, because I don't think that I had never heard the term sensory challenges, or I don't think I'd even heard neurodivergent prior to that training. And it really, again, I keep going back to it, but it does change how you view other people. And that, like you said, there's there's an invisible majority of people who have conditions that would qualify them as maybe having sensory challenges that if you don't have that training, you are not even aware of it. And you mentioned earlier, Ben, that just mentioned that you potentially could have.
I could be.
So probably a lot of people have that same lack of awareness.
I'll even take it a step further. So prior to getting into business, I was a teacher. I taught for 4 years, and I have a master's degree and so on and so forth, and I used that master's degree for 2 years post-grad. But the short version is, when I was teaching, I actually feel somewhat guilty. Now, I'll share this with you. I taught middle school English in Atlanta, and when the children that were, in the special needs classes were walking past, I would wave and smile and be friendly, but I didn't know anything about them. It literally was not until my son was diagnosed that it became real to me on a lot of those levels. You mentioned neurodivergent being a new word to you. It's a new word to me. I even probably well after Davy's diagnosis, autistic was that was the word that was coming out of my mouth, and there's a lot of layers of that, right? And so I'm learning the lingo and learning the language. I told you before the podcast, I'm a pretty casual guy. That's true by nature. I don't know, and I just approach it the best that I can and operate accordingly. So.
I think in the discussions that you and Marilyn and I had prior to starting the podcast or agreeing to come on the podcast, you mentioned that when you got Davy's diagnosis, that you really dove headfirst into it, right? So can you talk about the experience of learning to become part of what that community was about and how that informed your approach to being a parent to Davy?
I'm going to preface the diving headfirst part with the other part. So my son was diagnosed on February the 16th, 2022, 11 days before his 4th birthday. I went into a period of depression first before I did anything else. And it was probably from that period until about August that I began to realize that there's really something here that I've got to, engage and understand, not just in terms of the broad community, but in my little boy, right? And I wanted to know more and more and more, and that was really kind of the beginning of the ball rolling. Once that ball started rolling, it was rolling. And, at that point, I was looking for organizations I could be a part of, how I could get involved in the community. I had a lot of reasons for that, both from my own understanding and also just creating connection and community for Davy, and for just understanding, again, just the broader scopes of the spectrum and best ways to raise him, best ways to guide him, and so on and so forth. That led me to Autism Speaks. I joined the organization toward the end of 2022. I'm now the co-chair in Atlanta, myself and my friend Clayton. We tackle the city when it comes to setting out events and building community and raising awareness and building engagement and so on and so forth. And we've built a strong board around us, built a strong crew of individuals around us, and it's just kind of blossomed to where it is today. I love your story. I love your organization's story, and I want to get to know more and more culture cities out there. So, but yeah, that's where I really dove in, and kind of what the journey has been from there to here.
Awesome. Well, I think we can probably begin to wind the episode down, but since you mentioned Autism Speaks, how can people find out more about what Autism Speaks is and what you do as an organization?
Certainly. www.autismspeaks.org is our website. That's where I would always direct someone to go first. If you happen to have any questions whatsoever, I'm a point of contact, and I put myself out there as an ambassador for a reason. I'm connected with the C-level of the global organization, very connected with those guys, and certainly I'm more than happy to raise concerns or awareness or whatever needs to be raised, and making those connections as I need to from there. But I'm always here to be a point of contact to answer any questions, either in Atlanta or beyond. So
awesome. Uma, how can people learn more about Culture City, and if maybe an organization happens to be listening to the podcast that wants to follow in our footsteps and pursue certification, how can they do that?
Absolutely. Follow us on social media, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. It's Culture with a K, all one word.
I should have pointed that out, yes.
I feel like some days I need to tattoo that on my forehead. People spell Culture City 2 words. I'm like, no. Get us on LinkedIn. Email us. Download the app if you're a family. It's absolutely free. We've also created a new AI talker. So if you are a loved one uses an AAC device, which are oftentimes clunky, difficult to navigate.
What is an AAC, just for someone?
Augmentative assistive device.
Okay.
A communication device. And so folks will use that as their voice. We've actually developed one over the last year or so that's absolutely free, that uses AI. So it's intuitive. It helps you create different answers as it gets to learn more about you. And so would recommend folks to download the app, use the venue feature, but also the talker feature, and then, of course, social media and the website.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Marilyn, how can people take advantage of some of the resources that we have available for sensory challenges or any other barrier that there might be for them to enjoy the aquarium to its fullest?
Okay, well, starting with the website, like Uma said, we're actually in the process of updating our website. So when we're doing that, we're doing it with accessibility in mind. But we do have our social story on the website. We probably need to update that. I don't think we've updated it in a little while. We'll work on that. So there is a social story on our website. You can go to TennesseeAquarium.com KultureCity.org. There's an accessibility and inclusion page. You go to the bottom of the page, click on it. You'll see all of our accessibility and inclusion resources. We have sensory bags at the aquarium when you visit. If you need one in any of our buildings, whether that's IMAX, the ticketing center, or either aquarium building, we do have those sensory bags available. They're available for loan at no additional cost. We also have wheelchairs available.
Where can you get the sensory bags?
Those are at the aquarium, in the ticketing center, or at the guest services desk outside of the River Journey building, just outside of the gift shop, or in IMAX. When you come into the IMAX, they are available at the receptionist desk as well. So they are available. If you forget your tools, we have a limited number of supply available, but we're happy to help you out. Also, our wheelchairs are available for anyone who might need them at no additional cost when you visit the aquarium. The IMAX Theater has closed captioning and assistive listening devices for individuals who might need them for the films. Also, for groups who are planning a visit, you can reach out to our sales team when you're making the reservations. We are always able to accommodate groups as best we can, particularly groups that might need ASL translation. If we don't have a staff person available, we can also provide that resource as well. So just a number of resources available. We just like to hear from people. Let us know what you need. If we can make the accommodations, we will. And if not, we'll build it into a plan and see how we can accommodate at a later date. Also, applicants and job candidates who are applying for positions at the aquarium, we can make accommodations if you request them. So just email us at humanresources@tnaqua.org, and we can make accommodations for anyone who might need them as part of their job search or their interview process.
All right. Well, with that, I think we can go ahead and wrap up today's episode of the Podcast Aquatic. This is a topic that I've wanted to cover. We've been talking about this at this point for about 3 months or something like that. But I do think it's extremely important. Again, the people who work here, we really strongly believe in the mission. And I think if you believe in the mission, you want that mission to touch everyone that possibly can. And accessibility is an absolutely core component of making that a reality. And I'm just hearing stories like yours, Ben. There have been other guests who I've interacted with who have a similar kind of story and experience here. It just makes you feel like that's why we exist and why we do what we do, and in particular, why you do what you do, Marilyn. So thank you so much for joining us. Uma, thank you very much for joining us. Ben, thank you for trusting us with your story and Davey's story, and for coming to the aquarium. And I hope that we can continue to be a rewarding place for you to visit and a positive experience for you and Davey years into the future.
You will be.
Yeah.
We'll be here for years to come.
Yeah, and thank you for the invitation, Casey. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, and if you have an idea for a future episode of the Podcast Aquatic, or a question for somebody like Marilyn or Uma or for Ben, I don't know if we can share your contact information, but maybe they can reach out to you through the web.
Yeah, the World Wide Web. Find me on LinkedIn. I'm Benjamin Sheffield. You'll see a recruiter at S&I Technology, which is my company, and I'll also have a little headline tag of Autism Speaks Executive Leadership Council. But yes, I'm very easy to find.
All right. Or you can email me at podcast@tnaqua.org. While you're online, please do leave us a rating or write us a review if you have a little bit more time. Those are both easy and free ways to support the show. And in the meantime, until next time, remember that every drop matters.